Alright guys, welcome back. So in the last video we have built this front end for our social media application, which was the threads. And in today's video we're gonna build the back end. In other words, we'll build a REST API with Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB. We'll also handle the authentication with JSON web tokens. And hopefully in the next video we'll connect the backend to a front end and complete this application. So before we get into coding, let me just show you the functionalities or the endpoints that we're going to create in this video. So for this, I will head over to the Postman, and as you can see, I got a bunch of endpoints for posts and users. So let's just start with users. And the first thing that I will do is to sign up a user. So here I just pass some JSON data, which is the username, full name, password, and email. And if I try to send this endpoint, I mean like this request, so inside our database we should got that user. Now as we can see, the user's collection is empty right now. If I just try to refresh this, I should hopefully get that user. As we can see, we got all the information, and even the password is hashed, and the followers and followings arrays are empty because so the default value is 0. And then let's just try to do another thing. So I want to just update my password. Okay, initially it was 1 to 6 and now it is going to be 1 to 7. And in order to update, we should pass the ID of this user, which I will copy it from here, and then inside the update profile I'll just pass it into this endpoint. Now if I send this, it's going to say profile updated successfully. And so now let's just test it out. So I'll just log out from this account and it's going to clear the cookies for us. And now I'll just try to log in. Alright, so it was John Doe, and if the password was from 1 to 6, it is not going to work. So invalid credentials. If you just put that 7 at the end, it's gonna log in. And now we also got the cookie, which is the JWT token, right? And then now we could follow somebody, or first let's just try to get the profile. So here, if I just send this, as you can see, we got the username at the end, and it's gonna give the profile of this user. And now in order to follow or unfollow somebody, we need to pass another account's ID, because now if I just try to follow myself, it's gonna say you cannot follow or unfollow yourself. So let me just create another account. So I'll just say Sally, or maybe Bob Doe. I'll just say Bob Doe, and then email should be bobdoe@email.com. So I'll just send this. Now we are logged in as Bob Doe. Okay, I will get the excuse me, I'll get the ID of the John Doe. I copy that, and then inside here I will try to follow him. So I pass this ID inside, and it's gonna say user followed. So let's check. Here I will refresh my database, and inside the followers array of this John Doe, we'll get the ID of Bob Doe. Okay, if you just take a look at that, it ends with AD19 AD19. Okay, and following here is gonna be the ID of John Doe, which is AD0D ends with, right? Okay, it works. And now we can unfollow that user as well if we just send. So it's like kind of toggling this state. If you are following and you send this request again, it's gonna unfollow, and then vice versa. So I'll just send this in user unfollowed. Okay, so these are the endpoints for our users. And now inside the posts, I will not give you a demo, but like let's see which endpoints we have. So we have one for to create a post, like a post, reply to a post, and then delete some posts, or only one actually in this case. So you just pass the post ID here, and then you will be able to delete that. We can get a post, and also we could get the timeline or the feed for users. Okay, so as you can see, it just looks really fun, and we're gonna build this from scratch. So with that, let's get into the coding. Okay, now I am inside the VS Code and I have created a root folder or a parent folder, and then I just put the front end code inside here. So this is the code that we wrote in the last video. So now I'll create another folder, which is going to be the backend, and then here we're going to write all of our backend code. So first I'll just create a new terminal, and then I'll cd inside the backend. So cd backend, and then here I'll just say npm init-y so that we can get a package.json file where we'll just install all of our dependencies. So now here I got that package.json file, and I'll just say npm install and install all of our dependencies. So first things first, we'll just have the express and then maybe JSON web token in order to have that authentication, and then we'll say bcrypt JS, which is going to be for like hashing the passwords of users when we save them into database. And then we'll use .env to hide our environment keys, and then we'll use mongoose in order to work with our database, and then we'll just use the cookie-parser package, which is going to be needed in order to, so once we want to get the cookies from request and then send some cookies inside response. So this package is needed, and I think this is all of our dependencies. I'll press enter, and then we'll install one more dependency, but it's gonna be dev dependency, which is the nodemon. So now I'll just say npm install dash like uppercase D, and then nodemon. I'll just press enter. Okay, so now let's take a look at the package.json. Here are all the dependencies that we have, and this is the dev dependencies. So inside the backend, I'll just create a server.js. So it's gonna be our Kickstarter file, so to say. And then I'll just say const, maybe we'll just get the express. So I'll just say express and require express. And instead of doing like this, I actually want to use import syntax. So I'll just cut that, and inside the package.json, I'll just make this a type of module. So type is gonna be module, and I'll just save this. Now we are so we can just use import syntax. So import express from express, and then we'll create our application. So let's say const app get the express, and then app.listen, and then I just want to give a port. For now it could be 5000, and then here I'll just want to say like console.log server started at like localhost 5000, and then I'll just save this. And here, instead of just every time typing node server .js, so this is going to start that, but I don't want to really do that every time when I have a change inside my code. So that's why we installed the nodemon. So here I'll just come here, I'll just say dev, and then I'll just say nodemon server.js, and then for our start we'll just say node server.js, which is gonna be for production, and this is for when we're developing stuff. So save it here, and then now just watch. I'll just kill this, and I'll just say npm run dev, which is going to start this script. And now every time I make a change, it's gonna refresh. So let's say hey, as you can see, it just started automatically, and this is why we are using nodemon. So instead of having this port as hard-coded, it is a good practice to just get that port from environment variables. So I'll just say const port, so it's gonna be either process.env.port or it's gonna be 5000. So in order to use this, I'll just say this is gonna be the port, and server started at, we could just say delete here, and then that should be $, and then port, but that should be backticks, right? Not just regular code. And then so this is ready, but we don't have this process.env.port variable. For this, we'll just create a .env file, and that should be like this. And then I'll just have port is gonna be equal to, let's say, 5000. And now I can save that, here. So let's actually just try to maybe 3000. And now if I just save this, that should be okay, it didn't work. Maybe we could try to close that and open up again. So npm run dev. Okay, it cannot find that. So it is because we didn't use the .env package, right? So it's gonna be import .env from the .env, and then we'll just say .env.config. Now it's gonna allow us to see the content inside this packet, inside this file. So I'll just save this. As you can see now, it is using the 3000, which is here. So I'll just make that 5000. And so let's see. So I'll just refresh here. Okay, that was our kind of setup. And now I just want to set up the database, and then so that we can just work with our models, controllers, routes. So we're going to be using MongoDB. For that, I'll just go to MongoDB Atlas. And if you don't have an account, you should create one for free, or if you have already, you should log in. And in this case, I already have. I'll just log in. Okay, so I have logged in, and this is the dashboard that you will be get. And if you don't have any databases or any projects that you have initialized, you will not see this page, I guess. And so let's just create new one. So I'll just say create new project. And so my project name could be threads backend maybe. And I'll just say next. And then project owner is going to be me. Create the project. Okay, here we want to build a database. So I'll just go with the free tier and then create this. And so as you can see, I just left everything default. So here the username is going to be this, maybe we could say only my name, 123, and then password is also going to be like 123. And then I'll just create the user, but so maybe you should use auto-generated secure password in production. I'll create the user, and it's gonna say add the IP access list. I'll just add my current IP address. Okay, it's been already added, and I just finish and close. I'll just go to database. And so as you can see, we got some kind of spinner here. It just shows that it creates this cluster. Once it's done, we can work with that. But I think I'll just go and say connect, and we're gonna connect from our application. For this, you use this drivers option, and we're gonna copy this. So inside the VS Code, inside the .env, I'll just say mongo_URI, and then paste what we have copied. And for the password, you should delete this placeholder and then type it down your password, which mine was this. And then here you should put your database name. So like if you don't put in default, it's gonna be test. So here I'll just say threads, and well, let's see. So I'll just close this, and now we don't have any data inside. If we just say browse collections, we're not going to see anything, and I just want to add my own data. So my database name is going to be, as I said, threads, and so the collection name could be users. We'll start with users. So I'll create that, and it's going to be empty collection. There we go. So now we type down the database name here. Once we connect to DB, we will be inside this database. Okay, I'll save it here, and then we are going to type our function to connect to database. So inside the backend, and actually let's first just create a gitignore file, gitignore, and I'll just, maybe we could just take that gitignore file content and just copy inside. So they just have everything that you need, but it doesn't have the .env, I guess. So maybe we could put that at the bottom. And they have the not modules. Yes. Okay, so this is our .env file that we just put it inside our backend. And then here I'll create another folder called db, and we're going to do everything database related things inside here. So first, the as usual, so you say just connect db.js. So here we're gonna write our function to connect the database. So one more thing before we get into this connect db function, I will just have my GitHub Copilot open. I will not shut it off, and it is because it really allows me to write code faster inside this video. And whenever I accept anything, I'll just explain that. So I will not just accept the autocomplete and then just move on. I'll just explain everything that I accept. Okay, so let's start. I'll just get the import mongoose in order to work with the database, as I said. So we're gonna have const connect db function, which is gonna be asynchronous, and every time you have an asynchronous function, you should have a try catch block. So as you can see, it gives us some try and catch, and inside the catch you got the error, and you console log the error and then process.exit. And then here, so like process exit means like you're exiting this process. And then we have a connection variable which uses the mongoose connect method, and it uses this mongo URI which we have created inside the .env. And then this is some avoid like warnings in the console. If you just delete this object, you'll get some really weird warnings in the console in here, but that's just needed in order to avoid that. And then once you connect to DB, you're gonna get this MongoDB connected and with this host text. So let's just save this, and we should export this connect DB. By the way, we'll just say export default connect DB. And now inside our server.js, we can just say connect DB, and it's gonna import that, and we can call that at the top of our file or maybe below this .env, because we're using the .env like how to say, we use this process.env, so that should be below this line 5, right? And then I'll just save that, and we got some errors. Let's see. Oh, okay, so whenever you use this import syntax, right, so you should have the .js at the end if you're using a file. In this case, we're using connectdb.js, so it should be at the end. Okay, now if I just save this, it's gonna find that and hopefully connect to database. So let's see. So it crashed, so let's see why. Maybe I'll just so kill that and then npm run dev again. Okay, app crashed. Okay, I just realized, so it says like user create index is not supported, which is an option that GitHub Copilot gave us. So I'll just delete that and save again, see if that works. And yes, server started, MongoDB connected. So if you did something wrong in the database, that is not gonna connect, but if you just did everything as we did in the video, it should work. So now let's create our models. Inside the backend here, I'll just create the models folder, and then I'll just say user model.js. So here, if you don't know what model is, it is kind of like a blueprint. So like which fields you're gonna have inside a model. So it's maybe like a table in SQL. So once we type it down, you're gonna see, and once we use it, you'll understand if you're using for the first time. So I'll get the import mongoose, and from mongoose, so const user schema is gonna be mongoose.schema, and then it's gonna take an object, and then here we're gonna have all of our fields. So we're gonna have the name field, and so if you just have one property for it, so let's say it's gonna be type of string, you just type it down like this. But in this case, we want to add more stuff into here. That's why it should be another object. And then we'll just say now type will be string, and then it's gonna be required. So we'll also have the username field. So I'll just go to bottom, and username, it's gonna be an object again, because we're gonna give some more fields. So username, type string, required true, and it's gonna be unique. Every user will have only, so it's gonna be unique, okay? And then at the bottom we'll have the maybe email, which is gonna be also type string, required, and unique. We'll have the password, oops, So password, an object, type of string, and then so we forgot a comma here, and so maybe I could just shrink this a little bit more, and then type of string, but the minimum length should be 6, and then required is going to be true. After the password, we'll have the profile picture, so profile pic, an object, type of string. In default is going to be an empty string, because once we create an account, we're not gonna have any profile picture. If user wants to add, then it's gonna add. Okay, so we're gonna have the followers, which is gonna be an array, right? Array of IDs. So we'll just say type of array, and maybe we could say like array of strings, and then default is gonna be empty. The followers count will be 0 once you have created an account. So following will be the same, type of string of arrays, and then default is going to be an empty array. And then lastly, we could have the biography. So bio is going to be type of string, and then default an empty string. So default, and then at the bottom after this object you put a comma and then another object, and you say like timestamps true, and this adds the created at and updated at fields. So if you want to, it's just a really good practice to have this, because inside your application maybe you want to add this profile is created at, and then like the date. So I always use this, and I recommend you to use that as well. So I'll just, now we created the schema and we need to create the model now. So this is the convention. You just have that in uppercase, and here as well, uppercase and singular. So you don't say users, because Mongoose will figure out that this is a model and it's gonna create the users inside your database. So you're gonna see that inside the MongoDB. So we'll say export default the user, and okay, this is our user schema. Whenever we work with users model, we're gonna call this, and then so like use this object or like this constant. Now let's create our other model. So it's gonna be the post, so post model.js, and this is the only models that we'll need, one for the users and one for the posts. So here I'll just say import mongoose from mongoose, and then const post schema, mongoose post schema, and open up and need another object. And then here we're gonna have the, so this post is posted by someone, right? So posted by, and then this is gonna be the type of mongoose schema types.object ID. So this is gonna be, if you don't know what that means, so this is gonna be an ID, and that ID is gonna be auto-generated by the mongoose. That's why you use this. And the reference, so this object ID is gonna be an ID from the users model. So that's why we put the reference to users, and this should be required, and so let's say required to true. And then we'll have the text for this post, right? So type of string, and then let's say maximum of 500. Maybe that should be max length. And then here a post could have the image, so the type is gonna be string, but we should add that comma, I mean the semicolon, or just colon. Okay, type string, and then the likes for a post is gonna be the type of number. So I'll just say type is gonna be number, and then the default is gonna be 0. And then it's gonna have the replies as well. So I'll just say replies, and now the replies is gonna be array of something, right? So I'll just say array, and then each reply is gonna be an object. So I'll just create another object, and then so we'll just give the fields. Now each reply should have the user ID, so that we can know who commented this, right? Who replied. So user ID is gonna have some fields. So type is gonna be object ID type, and then reference to user model, and then it should be required. And then after the user ID, it's gonna have the text of the reply, right? The type of it is gonna be string, and that should be required. So let's say required true, and then there are two other fields that I just want to have, and it's gonna be the user profile picture. So let's say user profile pic, and then an object of type string, and then maybe that should be it, and then we'll just have the username. So username, the type of string. So I have these two additional fields for the user profile picture and username. It is because once we fetch the, so let's say replies, I don't want to get the user name and profile picture from another fetch request. Once I got the replies, I just want to have the username and user profile picture as we see here. So that's why I just add that. So it is to avoid another fetch request. So now let's just add the timestamps at the bottom after this object, another object, and timestamps to true. Now we'll just export this model. So const post in mongoose.model. Don't forget that should be singular and uppercased, and then pass the schema and export default post. So now we got both of our models, and it's time for us to create our routes and try to interact with the user models and like both of the models and work with some asynchronous stuff. Okay, now let's get inside the server.js and write our middlewares. So if you don't know what a middleware is, it is a function that runs between request and response. So first we're gonna add our built-in express middleware, so which is gonna be, and in order to call a middleware, you just say app.use and then like call the function and pass the middleware inside. So here express.json, what it does is it allows you to parse the incoming data from the request object, okay, request.body. So let's just say, and we got an autocomplete. It says to parse JSON data in the, let's say, request.body, and then we're gonna add one more, which is gonna be express URL encoded. So app.use and express URL encoded, and this extended should be true actually. And the difference between false and true is that, so first this URL encoded is used to parse form data in the request.body, but extended true means that even if the request body has some nested objects, it is gonna be able to parse that without any problem, okay? So that should be true, not false. And below this, we're gonna use the cookie parser. So first, let's just import that. Import cookie parser from cookie parser package. And then, so just call that like this. And it's gonna allow us to get the cookie from the request and then set the cookie inside response. And then below this, we're gonna have our routes, okay? So app.use, once we hit the /API/users, we're gonna call our user routes. So let's say user routes, and then this is gonna be what we'll be creating right now. And for routes, I'll just create another folder, and this is kind of best practice. You put your routes inside routes folder, and I'll just call it as user routes.js. In here we need express, so import express from express, and then we'll say const router. It's going to be express.router, but with a, I mean the R is going to be capitalized. And then we'll eventually want to export default this router, and then we'll say router.get post put delete, whatever the method that you want to hit, you just type it down. So we want to post to /signup, and then here we're gonna pass our function, so request response, and you're gonna write, so let's say response.send signed up successfully. So here, what's happening? So when you hit the API / users / sign up with the post request, you're gonna get this so to say response. But let's just say get so that we can see it. So I save here, but first import this. So it should be const user routes, and so it should be not required, but actually import import user routes, and from this. All right, so now if we just go to localhost, so localhost 5000 and /API / users, you'll get this. Oh, we cannot get because the server is shut down. Maybe no, it's not. So what's going on? So API / users / sign up, it should be right. So / sign up, and then signed up successfully. Now we hit this endpoint, and this is our response that we sent. So now just imagine that this function is gonna get bigger and bigger. Okay, so maybe 20 lines of code, 50 lines of code, and then we're gonna have our other routes. So let's say we're gonna have one route for login, like updating a profile, and maybe we'll have so to say like follow some users and much more stuff. So this file is going to be really massive and out of control. So instead of doing it like this, we'll not just gonna pass the function immediately into here, but we're gonna create something called controllers. Okay, this is like kind of like best practice, and it's like convention for Node.js environment. So here, so let's say we're just gonna say sign up user, which is the name of a function that we're gonna create. So inside the backend folder, I'll just create controllers, and here we're gonna have one controller for so to say like users. Okay, so I'll just say maybe user, should it be user or users? I'll just say user controller .js, and then here we're gonna have that function which was the sign up user, and so it's gonna be an async function which is gonna take the request and response. So it is like we're passing this function, so like this arrow function that we just created a moment ago, we're just passing this into this so sign up user variable, okay, which is our function. And then here we just need to export this, and so export sign up user. So I'll just get that from here, and I'll just put the .js. So now we are ready to just work on the sign up user function. But before we forgot, so this should be post. So we just made that get in order to send the request from browser. Okay, so let's get into the sign up user function. So I'll just save this file, and then inside here we're gonna do some stuff. So first, this is gonna be try catch, because it's an async function, so it's just better to have it. So I'll just say res.status of 500 inside the catch block, and then message could be error.message. Maybe this should be like error. Okay, and then so to be able to just debug this better, I'll just say console.log and like error in sign up user, and then just pass the error.message. And inside the try block, we'll just try to sign up the user. So first I'll get the fields that user passed. So name, email, username, and then the password from request.body. And we're able to parse this data because of this middleware that we just had. Okay, express.json allows us to do that. And then like after this, I'll first check if user exists. So I'll just say const user await our user model. So I'll just import this. So it doesn't give me, so let me just take that. Import user from so models user model.js, and then we're gonna say find one, and it's gonna take an object $, or, and like colon array with two objects, which is email and username. So it's just try to find a user if a user has this email or this username. So if this is the case, it's gonna say like we will return an error that says user already exists. So I'll just say if user, then just return out of this function and status of 400 and then message user already exists. But if this is not the case, we can just create the user. But first, let's just try to hash the password. So for this, we should create a salt. Okay, it's gonna take some time, so await bcrypt.gensalt, and this number, the higher it is more secure, but it will also make it slower. So 10 is actually just good number in this case. So we'll just say const hashed password, yes, and then await bcrypt hash the password user passed with this salt. And then now I think we can just create the user right now. So we'll just say const new user and say like new user and call it with an object. It's gonna take the name. We can do it like this, or just so we could use the abbreviation. So it is gonna be only the name, email. So it's equivalent to do it like this. All right, and then we'll just say username as well as the password, but it's gonna be the hashed password. So we created the user. Now we just need to save it into our database. So await new user.save. So now we created the user, and let's just send it as response. So I'll just say if new user, I just want to check, so like in any case. Okay, so I'll just say res.status of 201, which means like user created, and then we're gonna pass the ID. So like you could put the ID like this and then say new user dot underscore ID. This is what MongoDB gives you auto generated. Okay, but I just want to be consistent with it, and I'll just say underscore ID and then new user dot underscore ID, and then I'll just pass the name. So it's going to be something like this. We're just passing the data that we just created. And I think now we can save that. And so if there is not new user, if it is not being created, so probably some data is invalid or something just went wrong. So I will just handle that in this else block. So I'll just say res.status of 400. And like JSON is gonna be invalid user data. So now we can save this, and hopefully we'll be able to test it out. So for this, I'll just go inside the Postman, and then now I just want to create a workspace for this. I'll say create workspace, and yes, it's gonna be blank, and let's say name is gonna be threads YouTube, and then I'll just create it. So here I'll add collections, so one for users. Okay, I'll just change the name here, so users, and then another one for the posts. I change the name. We'll just handle the posts later, but let's just create that. And then here I just want to add a request. So it's going to be post request, right? And then our URL is going to be http, not s, because it's localhost. And localhost 5000 /API /users so sign up, right? And this name of this, we could just say maybe, yeah, sign up. All right, I'll just save this. It's gonna update here, and then inside the body, we want to send some JSON data. So I'll just press, or like I'll click the row and then go to JSON option. And here, let's say it's gonna have the username. I'll just say John Doe, and then full name or only name. So John Doe, email johndoe@email.com, and then lastly the password. So it's gonna say 1 2 3 4 5 6. And now if I just try to send this, hopefully it's gonna work. bcrypt is not defined, that's right. So let's get into the VS Code. We'll just try to import that, we forgot. So it just doesn't give me autocomplete. Import bcrypt from bcrypt.js. So save it and let's try that one again. And now, yes, user is created. Let's check our database. I'll go to MongoDB and I'll just refresh it here. And there we go. We got the user and password is hashed. So like the information is here, like followers and following is in the default case, which is like an empty array. And we got the timestamps, which is they created that and updated that. Okay, everything seems like working perfectly right now. And there is one more thing that we need to add, which is going to be generating the token and setting the cookie. For this, I'll just have a function. So once we create the user, we'll just generate token and set the cookie. So for this, I think I'll just have a helpers folder, and then inside we're just going to have that function. It's going to be generate token and set cookie.js. And I think that should be inside maybe a utils folder, right? It's just a better convention, I guess. I'll just put it here. So inside the utils, maybe we'll have some constants or other stuff that you can put it here. But in this case, we are only having the helper functions. So here, I'll just have the function const generate token and set cookie. So here we'll take the user ID and the response. And we're gonna see once we call this, and we're just gonna export default this function. So this function is gonna we're gonna create the JWT token. So for this, let me just import that. So import JWT from JSON Web Token, and then so first we need to create a token. So const token and JWT sign. So this is how we call that. And first is an object that should be so the payload that we're gonna have inside the token. So I'll just pass the user ID that we are getting as parameter, and then after this object you will put so some JWT secret, which I already put it inside the .env. So that this value actually should be something complex. But in this case I just put JWT secret. Maybe you should update yours if you're gonna put this project into production. And then after this secret, we're gonna have another object, and it's gonna say like when this token will expires. Okay, so you could put 30 days. I'll just go with 15 days. And then now we created the token. Now we need to set it as cookie. So res.cookie, and then like the name. So you could put token. I'll just go with JWT. Doesn't really matter. You could just put random stuff here, but it wouldn't make any sense. So I'll just pass the token. We created that, and it's gonna take one more object, which is gonna be like our options. Okay, so first this is gonna be HTTP only true, which means that this cookie will not be accessible via JavaScript, and it's just gonna make it more secure. So for the as you can see, it just says this cookie cannot be accessed by the browser, and it makes it more secure. Okay, maybe just can take it like this. And max age we're gonna have, so here you just can put 15D string here. That should be in milliseconds. Okay, like 15 days, 24 hours, and blah blah blah. And then we'll just say same site. Okay, so this is also, so that should be strict actually, not none. And I think this is for CSRF attacks, right? So if you don't know what that really means, it's kind of like kind of security vulnerability, and by adding this you're just make it so you're just protecting it more, so to say. I hope it makes sense. And then at the bottom, maybe you could just return this token in case we use it. So I'll just save this file, and inside the user controller, after we created the user, we just want to set the cookie. So I'll just say generate token and set cookie. We'll just pass the user ID and then the response, and we're passing this response because we are using, like, we are setting the cookie inside this response. Okay, I'll just make sure if it has been imported. Yes, it is. So now I'll just save this file and try to create another user in the Postman. Okay, so I just put some new information, which is Jane Doe, and I'll just send it. And now we got the cookie as the user. Inside the cookie, we're gonna see that name is JWT. So if you put that, so here, if the name was token inside here, then this field would be token. And let's check the database if this is the case. So I'll just refresh it here. And there you go, we got the Jane and everything is correct. So now let's create the login user functionality. So inside the user routes, I'll just duplicate this. So this should be /login and then login user, which will be coming from this user controller.js. I'll not save this so that it doesn't crash. And maybe I could put some comments like sign up user, and then actually we don't need this. So the function name is pretty self-explanatory. So I'll just say const login user, gonna be async function, and then put it inside the export. So I'll just save this file and then import this, save it here as well. So we'll have try catch as always, and inside the error, maybe we could just say res.status of 500 error message, and then console log error is coming from login user. And then inside the try, we will get the data. So maybe we could just copy it, like taking some notes, maybe like copying it. So in this case, we're only gonna get the username and the password, and then we'll say const user and await user dot find one from our database with the username, and we need to check if password is correct. So const is password correct, and I'll just say await. Now bcrypt should compare that hash with the password itself, and so like this password is coming from the user put it in the maybe form, like this is coming from the user, and this user that password is that hash in the database. And then we'll say if there is not user or there is like password is not correct, we'll just maybe we'll just return out of this function and we'll say invalid username or password. And then we should generate the token and set cookie as we did before, because we're authenticated, right? And eventually we'll just send the status with 200 and we'll just pass the user object. So here we'll have the underscore ID as user ID, name, username, email, as well as the username itself. I think now we can save it. And then inside the Postman, create another request. I'll add request that should be login and post request. Oops, I should close this. And then here I'll just get this. This is going to be a login and body row JSON. Let's say we created this user before. I'll just copy this. And then the password, let's say, so let's just put the wrong password. I'll just put like 7. So I save it, send the request. It's gonna say invalid username or password. Now password, if it is correct and the username was not correct, then cannot read properties of password. So let's just send this again. I don't know why it does that. So let me just check what's going on here. So reading password. Okay, so since the user is empty, right? So if user is not found, then this password, so like you cannot reach to undefined value of something. Okay, so you'll just need to add this question mark to check, to guard it, and I'll just save it. Now if we try to do that, it's gonna hopefully give us the correct error, which is gonna say that's just So it's me from the future just trying to explain this error in a better way. So the problem here is that we just passed a username that did not exist, right? We said like Jane Doe X, which we don't have a user like this in our database. So this user now is null or undefined value, and we are trying to compare a string, right? This password is a string, and we're trying to compare it with a null value, which is a bcrypt doesn't support that. And to solve this error, we should just say or and back it up with an empty string. Now it's gonna try to compare a password, a string, with an empty string, so it's not gonna give us any error. And then it's just gonna see it's gonna hit this if check, and now it's gonna give us invalid username or password. So that error was kind of strange, where it said illegal arguments, string and undefined. Now I hope it makes sense, so let's continue the video. So I'll just save it, and so maybe you guys see the process. Okay, now it works. So what we did was it said that it was an illegal argument, in which means that like bcrypt cannot compare a string with a null value. So we just put that empty string as the backup, and it just worked. So now if we just change it, both of the credentials, to the correct version, and we try to send this, it's hopefully gonna give us the user, and we are logged in, we have the cookie. So that's just great, that works. Now we can, I think we can continue with the other route, so which is gonna be, I'm just checking, so we'll have the logout user. So I'll just go here, it's gonna be again maybe post request, right? So it's not gonna be get. Okay, so logout, and we'll just say logout the user, and again a function coming from here, so const logout, and so maybe that should be async, or it shouldn't be really, so we'll just clear the cookies. And so let's say logout user, let's say, copy paste, and then import this. Okay, save it here, and then let's write our function. So we didn't save it here, so that's why it crashed. So now we'll just have the try and catch. Inside the catch, we'll just actually just copy and paste it here, and then you could say error, and then this try will have res.cookie. The cookie that we are trying to clear was JWT and an empty string, and then the object is going to be like max age. After like 1 millisecond, it's just going to clear that, and then res.status of 200, user logged out successfully. So let's create another request, or maybe we could just duplicate this. Okay, duplicate, and then change the name, so logout, change it here. So now since we have logged in as this user, if we just take a look at the cookies, we got one cookie, which means that we're logged in. I'll just send it, and user logged out successfully. Let's move on with our new route, which is going to be follow and unfollow user. So here I'll just have it actually only one route. Okay, so follow is going to be only thing that we need, but if you want, you can actually create another route, which is going to be like unfollow. So since this functionality is not really long to write, I'll just have it in one function, and it's going to be easy to read. That's why I'm not making two different routes, but if you want, you can do that, and I'll just go with only one function, and I'll just say follow, and or maybe like unfollow user, and I'll just create this inside user controller. So const, paste it, and then it's gonna be an async function. It's gonna take the request and response arrow function and export it from here, and save this file, hopefully import this. Alright, now we can type our function. So first try catch, and here maybe we could actually handle these errors in a better way, but I'll just move on so that this video doesn't get too long. And inside the try, we will first, and I did something wrong here. So since we're trying to follow one user, so it should have the ID of that user. So I'll just have it like this, and this colon and then ID, it means that, so this value is going to be dynamic, and you're going to see when we use this. So I'll just save this file, and then we're going to get that ID, and the way that we get it is from request.params. So I'll just accept that recommendation, and then I will say, like, now we have a current user that is logged in trying to follow somebody or unfollow someone, and then we have that user that is going to be followed or unfollowed. So I'll just say const user to modify. Okay, this is the user that we're going to follow or unfollow. So I'll just say await user dot find by ID and pass that ID from the URL, and then const current user, which is, let's say it's us that we have been logged in, and await user find by ID, and we're gonna get this from request.user dot underscore ID. But in order to do this, so now we don't have this information, and now it is a great opportunity for us to actually protect this route. And what that means is that we're gonna add a middleware here. So protect route, which is gonna be a function that we're gonna write, or like, yeah, it's gonna be a function. And so the reason is that we're adding this is I cannot follow someone if I am not logged in, or if I don't have an account, I can't unfollow someone, right? For this, we're gonna have middlewares, and then we'll also protect the route when we try to update our profile. So if I am not logged in, I cannot update my profile, or if I am John Doe, I cannot profile the profile of Jane Doe, right? So I hope that makes sense. I just give a lot of examples. So here I'll just go and create one folder, which is gonna be some middlewares, and then the first middleware that we're gonna have is gonna be the protect route.js. So inside this file, we're gonna have our const protect route, or maybe you could call protect route middleware or anything like that. I'll just say it's gonna be an async function. It's gonna have the request, response, and also the next. And if you don't know what next is, since this is a middleware, it should, like, let me just show that. So here, when we send a request to this follow /id route, we're first running this function, and if this function is successfully completed, then we're just gonna call this next, and it means that it's gonna run this function. Okay, so I think you'll just see that in a minute. We'll just say try catch, and inside the catch we'll just maybe could paste this stuff and make it error. And then so here first we're gonna get the token, which is from the request.cookies.jwt, and this should be exactly like this. And like, let me show that. So if you here put this, like whatever name you put here, it should be same with this one, because we're just getting that. And then if there is not token, we're gonna send another response. It's gonna say like unauthorized. And if so, then we'll just try to decode this JWT token. And the way you do this is you call the verify function with the token itself, and then this secret that you created in your .env file. And then we'll try to find the user now. Const user await user model dot, so this should be .js at the end. Oops, user model.js, and then user find by ID, and then so we're just passing this decoded user ID. And if you remember what that user ID is, so it was the payload that we put inside here, right? So whatever you say here, it should be same with this value as well. So we want to just return this user, but we don't want to return the password. So we'll just say select and like hyphen password, and request.user is gonna be user. So inside the request object, we're adding a user field, and it's gonna be this user that we just got it from the database. And at the end, we'll just say call the next middleware or the next function. And at the end, we'll just say export default protect route. So I'll just save this, and hopefully this made sense. Like, we take the cookie, we take the token, and if there is not any token, it means that nobody logged in. So we'll just say unauthorized. And if there is a token, we will try to verify that and get the user ID from the payload, and we'll try to find that user in our database. If this user exists, then it means that it's successful. We'll just inside the request object, we'll pass that user and then call the next function, which is in our case gonna be this function, right? Follow unfollow user. So I'll call this function. We can save this file, and then here we use that request.user underscore ID. So this is where we put this variable. So now we'll check if this user is trying to follow himself. We'll just say if ID, which is coming from the URL, if it is equal to request.user underscore ID, then we'll just say you cannot follow, or put the slash unfollow yourself. Okay, we handle this case, and then we will first check if this user is found, like if there is a user like this or not. So I'll say if there is not user to modify, or if we don't have this current user, if we couldn't find that from the inside the database, then we'll just say return user not found with the error code. And then we'll check if we are following or not. So const is following is going to be equal to current user dot following includes this ID. And if so, like if it is following, we'll just unfollow that, and in the else case we'll follow that, right? As I said, this is toggling the state. So now let me just put a comment like unfollow user. So here we're going to do two things, which is going to be, first we'll modify the current user but the following array of him, and then we're gonna modify the followers array of the user that we're going to follow or unfollow, which is the user to modify. And I just draw a little diagram for you guys. And here, let's say John unfollows the Jane. What we are going to do is we will remove the ID of Jane from the following array of John, and then we will remove the ID of John from here, which is the followers array of Jane. And this is what we call the pull operation in Mongoose. And let's say John is going to follow the Jane. What we'll do is we will add the ID of Jane into this array, which is the following array of John, and then we will add the ID of John into this followers array of Jane. So for this, I'll go back inside the VS Code, and what I'll do below this line, I'll just say await user dot find by ID and update field. Okay, so like update method. And first we'll get the current user. Okay, this is the following array that we are trying to remove the ID of the user to modify. I hope it makes sense. So what we did, we find the user by ID and update, which is this user. Let's say John follows the Jane, so this is John, and we are removing the ID of Jane from following array of John. And then we will now so we remove it from here. Now we'll just remove it from this user's array. Okay, and so I'll just say await user dot find by ID and update. Now we'll pass the, so like we'll get the Jane's array of followers, and we'll just remove that. Okay, so this is what it is, and then we're gonna do the same thing in this case. So I'll just say or like follow user, right? This is unfollow user case, and we're in the else case, it's going to be follow user. So we'll just let the GitHub Copilot autocomplete that. And the only difference is we're just using push, which is gonna add the ID, and here we're just removing that. So await and do the same thing for our current user, or like user to modify, and that's it. So now this function should be good to go, and maybe we should change this error in follow unfollow user. So I'll just save this and let's try to test it out. So first, I think I need to create another account. So let me check. Okay, so we have two accounts and we are logged in as Jane. Okay, we'll try to follow John. So create, like add a new request. So this is gonna be follow, and then gonna be post request. So we'll get this users follow, and then slash. Now this ID is gonna be dynamic, as I said. So let's just take the ID of John. I'll copy this, paste it, and we don't need to pass any body data. So I'll just send this. Oh, okay, unauthorized. I think we logged out. Okay, we have been logged out. So let's try to log in as Jane, and now we try to follow this user, and that should be post request. JWT is not defined. All right, we'll go to here. I think it was inside the protect route, and this. Okay, I'll import it. So import JWT. Oops. All right, now that should work. So we're here. We'll try to send this, and okay, it didn't work. So let's take a look at that. Maybe it's kind of buggy right now. I'll just close this and open again. Send it. Okay, so we didn't send any response, right? Inside user controller, like after this we should say res.status, res.status, like user unfollowed successfully, and then same thing here, user followed successfully. And now let's try to do this. So I'll just send this, like user followed successfully. So let's just check the database. I'll just refresh. So now the followers array of John will have the ID of Jane, which ends with 45 and 69, and it is this ID. And then following arrays of Jane will have the ID of John, which ends with 16F, and it's correct. So let's just actually try to unfollow it. So I'll just send this request again. Now user unfollowed successfully. Now both of the arrays should be empty. So I'll just refresh, and now following and followers arrays of John is empty, and here is like also empty, and it's working correctly. Now let's try to, I think we'll just try to update the profile. So for this, I'll go inside our user routes, and let me just actually add the update profile because it's also going to be protected route. So update, and it's going to take the ID of that user, and it should be protected route, and we're going to call that function. So update user, and inside our user controller we're gonna create that function, const update user. It's gonna be async function, pass it like here, and then save this file, import this. Now we can have our function. So try catch, and inside the catch, let's say this is gonna be error, and then res.status of 500, error message, and then console log the error so that we can see that. And now inside the try, we will get all the data that user might pass. So name, email, so password, okay, name, email, username, password. We're gonna have the profile picture in case if user add that, and we're gonna have the biography. And then what we're going to do, so we'll just get the user ID from the request.user_id. So probably we could just take them out of try, and then inside try we'll now say let user. We are using let because we're gonna change this variable. So await user dot find by id, and we're just gonna pass this user id. So if there is not user, we'll just say return res and user not found. So if user tries to update their password, we should first hash this. So for this, I'll just have an if check. So if password, okay, I just want to hash that. So for this, you could create a salt as we did before, and then const hashed password, pass the password and salt itself, and user.password is going to be hashed password. And what we can do is now we could just, so like we're updating the name if user tries to update its name, or if this value is null, then we're just gonna keep the user like the name of this user as it was before. And we're gonna do that for email, username, profile picture, and biography. And then here we'll just, after doing all this updating, we'll save the user into our database. And maybe we could say actually this should be user, right? User variable is going to be this updated user, and then res.status of 200 JSON, and this JSON could have a message like profile updated successfully, and then we'll just pass this user. And instead of doing it like this, I just like to have it this short version. And I think we could save this. Okay, so let's just test it out. I'll create another request. I'll just say add, so here add new request, and then this is gonna be a post request, which it has the name of update profile, and then we'll just put the so to say endpoint use API/users update, and then we're gonna put the ID of user that we are logged in, which is the Jane Doe, right? I'll get the ID of Jane Doe, copy it, and then here so I'll just pass it and paste it, and then body row JSON, and let's try to just update the username from Jane Doe to, let's say, Jane Doe 123. And I'll save this request and then send it, and it's gonna say profile updated successfully. Now let's just check it out inside our database, and the username of Jane Doe has been changed. But now there is one more one problem here, that if we are logged in as Jane, we shouldn't be able to change the we shouldn't be able to update profile of other users. And for this we're gonna add one if check. So maybe we could just add it here. So if request.params.id, so this is the ID that we pass into the endpoint or the URL, and if it is not equal to the user ID, which is us, and we need to convert it to string, because this so when we put this protect route here, so to say, so we got this user from the MongoDB, and this user._id field is an object, so we need to just convert this to a string. If you don't do this, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna hit this if check, because a string is not equal to an object. So that's why. And we'll now just say you cannot update other users profile with the status of 400. Now I'll just save this and go back inside here. Now I'm still if I try to update the profile of Jane Doe, I can do that. So okay, it didn't work. So let's see. So this is the ID of Jane. Yes, it is. So let's just try to do this again. So I'll just send this. Okay, so we are probably missing something. Request.prems, right? It should be prems. Okay, I'll just save it and send this. Now profile updated. Let's check it inside our database. Refresh. And there we go, username is updated. Now if we try to update the profile of John, which we shouldn't be able to, so here I'll paste the ID of John, and let's say username is gonna be johndoe123, and it's gonna say you cannot update other users profile. And there is one more thing that we're missing. So we talked about this to string, like converting this to a string because it's an object. So I forgot to add this here. So ID is a string that is coming from request.prems, and this is an object. So we just need to convert this to a string so that we shouldn't be able to follow or unfollow ourselves. So I'll just save this and let's just test it out. I am logged in as Jane Doe. I'll take the ID and I'll just try to follow myself, and we're gonna get that error. It says you cannot follow or unfollow yourself. And if we just remove that, I think, so it's gonna be weird, but it's not gonna hit this if check. So I'll just try to follow herself. As you can see, it just says user unfollowed successfully. And if we send this again, it's gonna say followed successfully. And inside the database, so like following and followers arrays state is gonna be okay, it was Jane, so it's gonna both add herself to followers and following, right? Which doesn't make any sense. So we're just gonna remove that by unfollowing. So I'll just refresh it here. So like what we are doing here is that now we're just preventing a user to follow itself. Okay, so here we should add that to string method so that it will hit this if check. Okay, with this now we are ready to build our get profile function. So here I'll just put it above router.get, and once we hit this endpoint like profile and maybe like ID, because it's gonna be, so to say, a dynamic route and it's not gonna be protected. Even if you are not logged in or signed up, you can see profile of others. So we'll say get user profile, and we're gonna create this function here below this. Const get profile is gonna be get user profile. It's gonna be async function, and we're gonna export this. And maybe we could just put this at the top of our file. So we're going to get the user by their username. So I think this should be username. Okay, we're gonna save this file and import it. Now save it, and then here we'll just get the username from the request.prems, and let's do some try and catch. Here we'll have the error and then handle the res.status of 500 and then console log the error. And then also now inside the try we'll find the user. So const user await user dot find one, and we're trying to find the user with our username. So it's going to be an object with the username, and we're going to select everything but not the password. And maybe we could just also remove the updated at field. So the way you do it is like you chain select methods one by one. So select again, and not the email but updated at. And then if this user is not exist, right, you will just say user not found, but other case 200 JSON this user, right? We're just gonna return this object. And now we can try to get this user. So create another request. I think this is the last one. Add request. So it's gonna be get, paste it, profile, and let's just try to get this profile. I think it was John Doe. If I just try to send this, okay, user not found. Okay, so we're not gonna pass the ID actually, so it's gonna be let's say John Doe. And as you can see, if we just pass the wrong username, it's gonna give us error, so it works. So now John Doe, send it, and we got the profile, but we don't see the updated that field and the password. So I will just change the name of this to update or get profile it was. And then so these are all of our endpoints, and let's just do a quick summary of what we did so far. So I'll just close everything, and then inside the backend we have created our starter file, which was the server.js. In here we are calling the .env.config to be able to read the content of this .env file. And then we are connecting to our database, which is a function that we created inside the DB folder, and it used mongoose.connect method with our Mongo URI, which we copied from the MongoDB dashboard. And then after that, what we have is we are creating an express server with our port, and it's coming from .env file. If there is not, we're just backing up with 5000. And then we have our middlewares, right? So on middlewares, which is express JSON to parse JSON data in the request body, and then to parse form data in the request body. So this is like form data, and this is for like general data. And app.use, this is cookie parser middleware to be able to reach and access the cookies from both request and response. And then we have our routes, and currently we only have the users routes, and we're gonna add the post routes in a minute. But so here it's again a middleware, so it means that if we hit /API/users/ any of these followings, we're gonna be calling the related function. So if we are getting the user profile, we're gonna call this function. If we are trying to sign up, log in, log out, and the last two routes are protected, which we are protecting it with middleware. And so inside here we are verifying the token. If it is successful, we're just calling the next so to say next function, next middleware, which is gonna be this incoming functions. It's either this one or this one. And then inside here we have follow and unfollow user in only one route. It just toggles the state. And then we have created our models, which is post model and user model. And the convention is that once you create the schema, you say mongoose.model, and this is gonna be like a capitalized. The first letter is gonna be capitalized, and this is gonna be singular. So somehow Mongoose will figure out that this is going to be plural in the database, and it's just gonna make it to look like this. So we just passed user, but it made it to like convert it to users. And yeah, this is how you import a model. And I think so. Do we have anything else? And then yeah, we have the generate token and set cookie, which is to sign or like create a token, JWT token, with our secret, and it expires in 15 days. We are passing that into our cookie, response.cookie, and we just return this token in case we use it in our code. So this is all we did so far, and now we're going to add our other route, which is going to be API posts, and we're just going to call the post routes, which we'll create. So for this, I'll just go inside the routes folder and create post routes.js. And then here we'll just import the express, and then we'll say const router is going to be express.router, and then we'll just export default this, and then we'll have our routes. So router dot, let's just first create post. So I'll just say router.post / create, and then we're gonna pass our function, so let's say like create post. And then this is going to be coming from our controller. It's going to be the post controller.js. And then here I'll just say const create post. It's going to be async function, and then we'll just export this. It's going to be inside an object. I'll save it and then import this .js and then import this router as well. So it's gonna be import post-routes from routes and post-routes.js, and then I think we can now just write the function. So a post first gonna have the posted by, text, and image fields. If we take a look at in our model, we're gonna see that gonna have the posted by, text, and image field, and the other ones are like default, so we don't need to add that once we create a post. And so let's just do it. So try catch. Inside the catch, we will just handle the error. So we'll just say res status 500 and send it. And then you could say console.log and just put the error. And then inside the try, we will get this posted by field and text as well as the image from request.body. And then so first we'll check if the posted by is not provided, or if the text is not provided, then we'll just return an error. So if the image is not provided, it's not a problem, so it's optional, because some posts might have only like text. Okay, so return res.status, and please fill all the fields we're gonna say, or maybe we could just say posted by and text fields are required. And then below this if check, we'll first check if this user exists. So we'll just say user, so it should be await, and in our user model find by ID, and we'll call our user model, that should be .js. And if we can't find this user, if user not exists, we'll just say user not found, and this should be 404 message. So if the user is trying to create a post for someone else, so it shouldn't be allowed, so we're gonna just check it. So we'll say if user _id, and we need to convert this to a string because it's gonna be object by default. And if it is not equal to request, so like this, request.user._id, which we put it in our protected route, and we'll just say to string as well. So if this is the case, we'll just say you're not authorized to create a post for someone else, or we could just say like unauthorized to create post. And then so we should check the length of the post, because we said that maximum is going to be 500. Const max length is going to be, we could just say 500. And then if text.length, if it is greater than 500, we'll just say text length should be less than this max length. So we're just putting it inside a variable in case you want to update it, so that it's just a good practice to do it in this way. And after this all if checks, which means there is no problem, so we'll just say const new post, and I'll just use this constructor. So new post, open up our object and just pass the this fields posted by, text, and image. And then we can safely just say await new post, save it. And then at the bottom we're just gonna say like res.status of 201, which means it's created, and we'll just send the post as the result. So I think I can just make it like this. So here, okay, so now let's just test it out. I'll save this file as well, go to postman. Inside the post I'll add a request, which is gonna be post request, and then we'll say create post. In here we'll just say API users posts, and then create. It's gonna body pro JSON. Now let's say we are trying to create a post for, let's log in as Jane Doe, and then we'll get the ID of her. It is needed because we just need to have this posted by field. So posted by, paste the ID, it's gonna have text, so we could just say this is my first post, and then maybe you could have an image, or it will not in this case. So let's just send this request, and we have an error. We cannot send it to here. Posts create, let's check. API slash posts and slash create. Yes, actually we can. So let's try that out again. Localhost 5000 API slash posts, this should be, and we shouldn't have this. Okay. Cannot read properties of undefined reading underscore ID. So let's just check this. Underscore ID, where did we use that? Okay, user, which is here, request.user.underscore ID. So maybe we could, let's just console log the user, and console log the request that, oh okay, I forgot. Okay, it's because we didn't protect this route. If you're not logged in, then you cannot create a post. So protect route middleware, we're just gonna add it into here, and then I'll just save this file and save this one again. Now hopefully it should work right now. So post is not defined, we didn't call our so to say our model. So post, import this. Okay, and let's try once more. And yes, post created successfully. Let's refresh our database, and we should hopefully get that posts collection. And there we go. So now we have a post. It is from posted by with Jane and text. This is my first post. It doesn't have any likes, no replies, and it doesn't have any image. Okay, great. Now everything works as expected. So let's just build our other function, or our other route, which is gonna be to, let's say, to get a post. Okay, router.get. So maybe it should be only this route, and then we'll just say maybe get post, and we're just gonna create this function inside here. Shrink this, const get post, and export this. So I'll just save this file, and then so that we can import this. And before we forget, we should add the post ID here so that we know which post we are fetching, right? I'll just put the ID here. Maybe that should be post ID. So the name doesn't really matter, but let's just be consistent and use this syntax where we just add the ID, and I'll save it here. And then here, let's just do try catch. It will have the error and res.status of 500 with the error, and then we'll just say const post, and we'll say await post find by ID, which is coming from request.params. And then below this, if this post does not exist, we'll just say post not found with the status of 404. And if this is successful, then we'll just say res status of 200 post found, and just send the post. Maybe we could just even delete the message, just send the post. Okay, so that was the last post that we created. I'll just copy the ID, and then here inside the postman, I'll have another request. It's gonna be get post, and then API posts, and then we'll just have the ID. So let's see, and this is the post that we got. So now let's add our route to delete a post. Inside the VS Code, we're gonna have, I'll just duplicate this and then put it bottom, and this should be delete method. And then we'll have the post ID, and we'll just say delete post. It's gonna be our function that we'll create here. So const delete post async function, and then export this. Okay, so as always, try catch error, handle the error, and then here we'll just first try to find the post, post await find by ID and pass the ID that is coming from request.params. And if this post does not exist, we'll just say post not found. Otherwise, we'll just first check if this post is created. So like the user that is trying to delete this post, if it is the owner of this post, we'll just check that and we'll say post posted by, we'll just convert it to a string because it's an object. If it is not equal to request.user underscore ID, which is the field that we added in our protect route, we'll just say 401, which is unauthorized message. So we'll just pass our message unauthorized to delete the post. And then if we pass this if check, we'll say await post, so post model, that should be uppercased, and then we'll say find by ID and delete, and ID is coming from our request.params, and then we'll just send our status with the response. So we'll say post deleted successfully. Hopefully this is going to work right now. I'll just save this and import this delete post, and now let's just test it out. So I'll get the ID of this post that we have created, and then another request. So it's gonna be delete method API posts, and we're just gonna pass the post ID. So if I just try to send this, cannot read. Okay, we have another problem because this should also be a protected route. So protected route, I always forgot to do this, and now we're just adding that request.user into the request. So let's try once more, and if we don't have a correct ID, so let's just delete that too. It's gonna say post not found. Okay, so this ID is not even correct. Okay, now this is going to say like post deleted successfully. And then let's create another post. So this is my first post. It is coming from Jane Doe, and now we'll just log out and log in as John Doe. So we will log in as John Doe and try to delete the post of Jane Doe. So I'll log in and I'll get the, so let me just grab the refresh here. Let's just get the ID of the post, which is created by Jane Doe, and we'll try to delete as John Doe. So it should say like, it should give us this error where it said unauthorized to delete post. So post not found. Did we got the ID? So ID is wrong. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just doing wrong. So we should get the ID, not the posted by. So here I'll just pass the ID of the post, and it's gonna say unauthorized to delete post. Okay, this function is also completed. Now we will try to build like and unlike the post. Now before we add our like or unlike function, we should change our model. I just realized while recording. So this likes is type of number, and in our database it's just 0, or like it's gonna be incremented. But in this case, we have no idea to know that if a user liked this post or not. So in order to achieve this, we should have this likes as array of user IDs. And then in order to count how many likes this has, we'll just get the array.length. Okay, so in order to do this, first we just need to update this field. I'll just say array of user IDs, and then so type is gonna be this object ID type that is coming from Mongoose, and reference is gonna be to our user model, and default case is gonna be an empty array. So now we are able to write our like and unlike function. So I save this post model and close it. Inside post routes, I'll duplicate the last one. This is gonna be a post method, and /like/id. So this is gonna be a like unlike post. I'll copy this. Inside here we'll just say const like unlike post async function, and then we'll just say export it, and I'll just save this file, also this one, and that should be a protected route. If you're not logged in or if you don't have an account, then you can't like a post. Alright, just save this file, and then here we'll have our try catch, handle the error, status of 500 with the error.message, and then I'll get the post ID. So it's gonna be from request params, and I just want to rename this as post ID so that it's just easier to read. And then we'll get the user ID, which is from the request.user_id, and const try to find the post. Oops, that should be equal, and I'll just scroll a little bit, and then await post.find by ID, that should be find by ID, and just pass the post ID. If there is no post, we'll send 404 with like post not found, and now we can check if user liked the post, right? And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna take a look at that likes array of the post, and if it includes this user ID, then it means that user liked the post. And if user already liked the post, we're just gonna remove that from there. And in the else case, so like here we are unliking the post, so it should be like this. So unlike post, and then here I'll just have my comment as like post. And while doing unlike, we'll just use the pull method as we used while we were doing this follow unfollow function. So await post, we'll just say update 1, because we're only updating one post, which is going to take an object where the ID is equal to our post ID, and then another object will so I'll just auto complete this, and it says that inside the likes array, just remove that user ID, right? So just pull that user ID, which means just remove, and then res.status of 200 post unlike successfully. And then in this else case, we could just say post.likes.push, and we're just gonna push this user ID, and we should save this post to our database. I'll just accept it like this, and then I'll send our response, which says that post liked successfully. Now first let's just create a new post, because we have changed this field, right? This likes is gonna be an array. So first I just want to delete this post. I copy the ID inside the here, I'll just paste it, and we need to log in as JWT, because that post was posted via JWT, right? I'll just log in and delete this. So post deleted successfully. Now let's create another post. This is my first post, is coming from JWT. Alright, now as we can see, likes is now an array. If we check it in our database as well, it's gonna be an empty array by default. So now let's try to like this post. I'll create another request. So it's gonna be API posts like, and then pass the post ID. So it's gonna be a post method. If I send this, so it says post not found. Yes, because we deleted that, we should take this post. I copied the ID, and I'll just paste it. Okay, now post liked successfully. Let's check in our database. Now likes is empty. If I refresh that, we should get the ID of JWT. There we go. That's how we do it. And now if we just send this request again, which is gonna unlike the post, and if we check it, it's gonna remove that ID from the likes array, and now it's empty. Okay, this functionality is also done. Let's continue with replying to a post. Okay, now I am inside the post routes.js, and I'll just duplicate the last route that I had, and I will just say, instead of like, it's gonna be reply, and then we're gonna have the post ID so that we know which post that we are replying to. And then after this protect.middleware, we're gonna have reply to post function, which is gonna be coming from our post controller. So I'll just pass it here, and then I'll save this. It's gonna crash for a second, and let's just export this function. So const reply to post is gonna be async, and then oops, I'll just pass it into our export object. And now if we just save this, it's gonna work, and we're gonna have the try catch, and in the catch we'll just handle the error res.status of 500 with the error message. And then first things first, I just want to get the reply, which is gonna be the text, and it's gonna be coming from request.body. And now I want to get the post ID, and it's gonna be coming from request.params. I'll just say ID and request.params, and again I think I just want to rename this to post ID so that our code looks a little bit better. And instead of doing it like this, so this is kind of confusing maybe, so I'll just say post ID is coming from request params.id, and after that I'll just get the user ID from request.user object, and then we'll get the profile picture, so user profile pic. It's gonna be request.user profile picture as well as the username. And if the reply doesn't exist, okay, if it is not provided, we'll just say text field is required with the 400 status code. And so if this is okay, if it's been provided, then we'll just check if this post exists. So we'll say await post.find by ID, pass the post ID, and if post does not exist, we'll just say 404 post not found. And in the else case, if we just passed all these if statements, we'll just create our reply object, which is gonna has the user ID, it's gonna have the text, user profile picture, and our username. So we'll just say post.replies. So inside the replies array, we're just gonna push the reply that we have just created, and then eventually we'll just save this post into our database, and we should send a response as well. So res status 200, and then reply added successfully. So instead of post, maybe we'll just send the post so that we can see the reply array. So I'll just save this, and inside the postman, I think we should rename this. We forgot to do that, so let's just say like, and this should be delete post, right? And then let's say like post. So I'll just create another one. Maybe we could just duplicate this one. All right, so this is going to be reply post, and then posts reply, and then we're gonna have the post ID. So let's see if this post exists, because off camera I just sometimes test some stuff. So here we have this post. I'll just grab this ID, and if you take a look at the replies, now it just doesn't has anything, so an empty array. So this is because like I'm doing some testing stuff like off camera, so I just deleted that, and now replies is empty. Okay, and that should be the default case. So now we will try to add that reply into this replies array. So inside the postman, I'll paste that post ID, and then go to body, row, and text is gonna be like JSON, and let's say it's gonna have the text field, that should be a string, and then hey, this is my reply, and I'll just send this. So unauthorized, we just need to log in. I'll just log in as John Doe, and let's try to reply to a post. I'll just send this, and reply added successfully. And if we just scroll, then we're gonna see that replies has this post, like we got the username of the user, and like user ID, user profile picture, as well as the text. So let's just take a look at the database as well. I'll just refresh it here, and then replies array will have that object. So let's just reply again so that you guys feel ready. I mean, like you guys feel absolutely this is working. So I'll just send this again. This is my reply to, and let's just refresh. and it's going to be added here as well. So we got 2 replies. This is the second one and this is the first one. Okay, now we have to build our last function, which is going to be the get feed posts. For this, I'll go to VS Code and then post routes. I'll just put it above. Okay, so it's going to be, let's say, so slash feed, and then this should be protected route, because we don't want anyone that doesn't have an account to see some posts or like have the home page. Okay, and I'll just say get feed posts, and it's gonna be coming from this post controller. So I'll just paste it here, and then I'll just export that function. Okay, it's gonna be async as always, and try catch, handle the error, res.status of 500 with the error message. And before we forget, so get feed posts. Okay, so inside here, first we're gonna get the user ID, const user ID. So it's gonna be inside the request.user object. Now let's try to find the user in our database. So await user.find by ID and pass the user ID. If this user does not exist, we'll just return with an error. So we'll just say 404 user not found. And now we need to get the list of users that the current user follows. Okay, so for this, I'll just say const and following is gonna be equal to user.following array. And now we just need to find the posts where the posted by field is in the following array. So let me just type in, it sounds mouthful, but it is not actually. So const feed posts, I'll say, and await post.find, and here it's going to take an object where the posted by field is, so $in, so like it's in the following. And like what we are doing here is that we'll just finding the posts where the posted by field is in the following array. And I'll just, at the end, I'll just say sort and create that -1. And it means that it's gonna sort that in descending order, so that we're gonna see the latest post at the top. And I think with this, we can just send a response with this feed posts. Okay, so I'll just save this here and then save it here. Now in order to test this, some other user should have post and we should follow that. So let's just check the state of our database. How many users do we have? So we have John Doe and Jane Doe, and let's see if anyone follows another one. Okay, so Jane Doe follows follows the John, and I think, so which one has the posts? So posted by 4569. 4569 is Jane. Okay, so we're gonna follow the Jane, and then we'll try to see if we are gonna get the feed with the post of Jane. So I'll just so we are logged in as John. Okay, we are following the so we follow the Jane. Now I'll just create a request, and it's gonna be post request, or I'm sorry, it's gonna be get request. I'll just say get feed, and then I'll say API post feed. And now let's just first log out. Okay, I'll just log out, and if I try to get the feed, it's gonna say unauthorized, right? So we need to log in for that. I'll just log in and try to get the feed, and we should have see feed posts. There we go. So now this is the post that we see. It is posted by Jane, so it has some replies and all the other data. So now just imagine if we were following bunch of people, bunch of users, and if they posted some posts, we would see all of them inside this feed posts array. Okay, we have just completed our REST API, which is integrated with MongoDB, and it even has the authentication implemented. I tried to explain everything as much as I can. I hope you'll learn something new from this video. If so, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It supports the channel a lot. and in the next video we should be able to connect this backend to a front end and complete the application. So with this, I think I'll just wrap up this video here. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.